I thought the Philippines was a poor country. That was what I had been told, what I had seen on television, and what I imagined in my head. But nothing could have prepared me for what I discovered when I finally saw the country with my own eyes. The moment the airplane doors opened, the story I thought I knew began to fall apart. The first shock was the people. I expected tired, sad faces, worn down by difficult lives. Instead, I saw smiles. Real smiles. The kind that come from deep inside. Airport workers joking with each other. Taxi drivers helping strangers with luggage. Kids waving at travelers they had never met before. How could a country that is poor feel so full of life? As I traveled further, something became clear. The Philippines might not have the biggest economy in the world, but it has something rare, something powerful, something many wealthy countries are slowly losing. Community, heart, and a unique strength that money can't buy. The next surprise came when I visited small neighborhoods. You might expect that places with small houses and simple living would feel sad or depressing. But the energy was the complete opposite. Families sat outside together, sharing stories, playing music, laughing loudly enough for the whole street to hear. Kids ran barefoot, not because they had nothing, but because they were free. Neighbors brought food to one another, not because they had extra, but because that's what people do. A man cooking barbecue on the street called me over to try some. I asked how much. He shook his head and said, "You're a guest. You don't pay." In a world where everything has a price, this felt unreal. I noticed something else. Filipinos know how to celebrate life. Even when times are hard, they sing, dance, joke, and find reasons to be happy. I began to wonder, is true wealth measured in money, or in how much joy people can create from almost nothing? If you've ever been to the Philippines, you know about the food. There's something magical about how simple ingredients turn into meals full of flavor and warmth. I tasted adobo, halo, lechon, lumpia, and meals cooked by families who barely had enough, yet insisted on feeding me anyway. In many places, people who had less than I did were more generous than anyone I had ever known. Isn't it strange how people with the least often give the most? Then came another surprise, the cities. I expected old, broken buildings and empty streets. But instead, I saw giant shopping malls, beautiful parks, modern highways, luxury condos, and high-tech offices. Metro Manila looked like a mix of different worlds, rich and poor, old and new, tradition and modern life all in one place. When I asked a local how this could be, he smiled and said, "Because we make things work even when it's hard." Filipinos don't just survive. They create. They build. They imagine. Everywhere I went, people were working. Shops open early, markets alive with sound, farmers selling fresh fruit and vegetables, fishermen coming back with their catch. In small villages, mothers made homemade snacks to sell. Teenagers sold plants, clothes, and anything they could create online. It seemed like everyone had a side business, a dream, a plan. Call it hustle, call it creativity, call it survival. But it was impressive. And then there was something even more powerful. When disasters strike, typhoons, earthquakes, floods, the world sees the damage. But I saw something else, the spirit of the Filipino people. After storms wash away homes, they rebuild. After businesses close, they start again. After loss, they keep moving. They help each other, carry each other, feed each other. It made me ask myself, how does a country that faces so many hardships stay so hopeful? Maybe because Filipinos don't just live for themselves. They live for family, for friends, for each other. Some of the people I met had relatives working overseas, sending money back home not because they were forced to, but because family always comes first. Their sacrifices build houses, pay for school, and give children a future. The whole family succeeds together. I began to see that poor is the wrong word. You can be rich in money, but poor in kindness. You can be rich in buildings, but poor in culture. You can be rich in technology, but poor in happiness. So what does it really mean to be rich? In the Philippines, I learned that wealth is not just about money. Wealth is community. Wealth is joy. Wealth is generosity. Wealth is resilience. And even in places where life is tough, people create beauty. They show strength. They stay hopeful. One afternoon, I visited a small fishing village. The houses were simple, built from wood and metal sheets. Children played on the beach with plastic bottles and scrap pieces of rope, yet their laughter was louder than any toy could ever make. A fisherman told me, "Life is hard here, but look," and he pointed to the ocean. "We have this, we have each other, and every day is a blessing." When I asked if he ever wished to leave, he shook his head. "Why would I? My heart is here." It made me think, could a life filled with love and peace be better than a life filled with stress and endless competition? As I traveled more, I saw another side of the Philippines. Young people building businesses, artists making music and films that shook the world, inventors creating technology, students studying to change the future. The country is full of talent, full of intelligence, full of creativity. And they weren't waiting for the world to save them. They were creating their own path. Maybe the biggest shock of all was how safe it felt. Strangers treated me like family. People warned me to be careful, not because they wanted to scare me, but because they cared. In big cities, in small villages, everywhere I went, Filipinos welcomed me with respect, kindness, and curiosity. They wanted to share their culture, their food, their music, their stories. And I started asking myself a powerful question. If the world calls the Philippines poor, then why did I see so much happiness? Why did I feel so safe? Why was everyone so generous? Why did strangers treat each other like family? What if we have been looking at the wrong things all along? What if true poverty is not lack of money, but lack of humanity? If you're watching this and you've been to the Philippines, how did it change you? Did the people surprise you the same way they surprised me? Share your experience in the comments. I'd love to read it. And if you're enjoying the story, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it. It helped a lot, and it encourages us to share more stories like this. But the biggest shock was still waiting for me. Something I didn't expect. Something that changed the way I see the world, and changed the way I see life. It happened on a day that looked normal at first, until everything changed. It started early in the morning. I was walking through a small town, and the streets were quiet except for a few tricycles and vendors setting up their carts. I noticed a group of children gathered near a tiny house. Their clothes were simple, their slippers worn out, yet they were smiling and laughing. One of them waved for me to come closer. At first I thought they wanted money, but instead they wanted to show me something. Inside that small house, I met a grandmother cooking breakfast over fire. The family had very little, yet they insisted that I sit and eat with them. I tried to refuse, thinking I would take from what they barely had. But the grandmother just smiled and said, "Food tastes better when it's shared." That sentence hit me harder than anything I had heard before. While we ate, their father arrived. He was a construction worker, tired and covered in dust. But when he saw his children, he smiled as if every problem disappeared. I asked him if life was hard. He nodded. But then he pointed to his family and said, "Hard, yes. But look at them. I am rich." That moment changed everything. A man with so little, feeling richer than many people who have everything. It made me wonder, what are we chasing in life? Money? Fame? Things? Or happiness? The truth is, the rest of the world could learn something from the Filipino spirit. Many countries are filled with stress, loneliness, and people who barely talk to their neighbors. Yet, in the Philippines, even strangers feel like friends. You cannot walk down a street without someone greeting you. You cannot visit a home without being fed. You cannot stay lonely because someone will sit next to you, tell a joke, or start a conversation. Later on, I traveled through different islands. Palawan with its crystal blue water, Cebu with its rich history, Bohol with its natural wonders, and Davao with its peaceful atmosphere. Everywhere I went, I saw beauty, sometimes natural, sometimes man-made, but always full of life. The beaches looked like paradise, mountains rose like they came out of a dream, and waterfalls hid in green forests like secret treasures. If this is what poor looks like, then how do we define rich? And it wasn't just nature. There were world-class resorts, airports, businesses, and universities. The contrast shocked me. Yes, there are areas that struggle. Yes, poverty exists. But that is not the whole story. The world only sees the struggles, but not the strength. They see the challenges, not the victories. They count the problems, but not the progress. So many Filipinos work hard every day to build a better future, not just for themselves, but for their families, their communities, and their country. They chase education, they start businesses, they learn skills, they innovate. Everywhere I looked, I found people who refused to give up. The longer I stayed, the more I realized something important. The Philippines is not just a place. It is a feeling of home, even if you are far from your own. A feeling of family, even if you are a stranger. A feeling of hope, even when life gets difficult. Maybe that is why millions of foreigners visit and never want to leave. Some come for vacation, but end up staying for life. And when I asked them why, they all gave the same answer. The people. Filipinos have a gift. They can make you feel seen. They can make you feel welcome. They can make you feel like you belong. Isn't that what everyone in this world is searching for? If you've ever experienced this kind of kindness, do you think the world would be a better place if more people were like that? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your ideas. And if this story has touched you in any way, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and share it with friends. The world needs to see what the Philippines truly is. But here is the real twist in the story. Before I left the country, I visited one last place, an area many foreigners never see. A village hit by a storm months earlier. Homes destroyed, roads broken, electricity gone. This was the image the world uses to define the Philippines. But what I saw there was completely different. People rebuilding houses together. Teenagers carrying wood and hammering roofs. Mothers cooking large pots of food to feed everyone. Children playing and laughing in the rain. No one crying. No one complaining. No one giving up. Even in the middle of destruction, they were still smiling. Families who had lost everything gave water to strangers. Neighbors shared materials. Friends helped friends, and strangers helped strangers. I asked a young man how he could smile after losing his home, his belongings, everything. He answered, "We can lose our house, but not our hope." And that is when I understood. The Philippines is not a poor country. It is a country rich in something the world desperately needs: humanity. When you measure a nation only by money, you miss its soul. When you judge a place only by statistics, you ignore its heart. The Philippines has problems, yes. But it also has courage, strength, compassion, and a spirit that refuses to be broken. So the next time someone calls the Philippines poor, remember what you've heard today. A country is not defined by what it lacks, but by what it gives. And the Philippines gives love, kindness, generosity, and joy more freely than any place I've ever seen. If you were given a chance to choose, would you rather live in a place where people have money but no happiness, or a place where people have little but give everything? What does real wealth mean to you? Share your answer in the comments. I'm very curious. And if this message opened your eyes, hit the like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. The world deserves to know the truth.